Kia ora everyone and welcome back to Civilization 6. Today I'm going to take you through some tips for settling cities. In particular, these will apply to your very first city, but you can apply them more generally across the board. So let's jump straight in. You can see I've just spawned into a new game with Rome, and first up I want you to head down to the bottom left and make sure that you've got resource icons and yield icons on. I'm also going to put the grid on for simplicity's sake for this video. Next up, I'm also going to show you lenses, and I'm just going to quickly turn on the settler lens because this ties in with my first tip, which is freshwater. Your first city, without a doubt, should definitely be settled on fresh water. With ones later in the game, you can get away with settling perhaps on coastal water or a tile away because you can build an aqueduct to connect to the fresh water. But for your first city, fresh water is fundamental. You can see in the key up in the top right, it provides +3 housing. That will enable you to grow easier in the early game without having to worry about where you're going to get your housing from. If you want a full breakdown on housing, by the way, link in the doodly-doo, I have a full guide on it. Anyway, you can see here that this river is going to be my source of fresh water, and I'm going to want to settle along the river, okay? That much we can tell for free already. So, I know now that I can narrow down where I want to settle to these tiles along the river. There aren't any other sources of fresh water within my vision, and again, if I pop back to that settler lens, you can see that actually there is one down here, so there's probably another river flowing around here somewhere, but we can't see any others, and it's unlikely to be worth walking all the way there. On walking, I would say, and my first tip is, don't be afraid to move your settler, okay? Don't spend too long doing it. I would recommend certainly no more than 3 turns, and preferably 1 or 2, depending on your game speed, of course. But in general, don't be afraid to move your settler. So we're going to possibly do that here. Let's delve in. My next tip is plains and hills. In particular, I want you to pay very close attention to tiles that are providing 2 production, okay? And the reason why that matters is because by default, cities in this game will always provide you with +2 food and +1 production. So see this tile here? This tile gives +2 food and +1 production because it is grassland, woods, flat tile, okay? So it's giving 2 food and 1 production. Now, if I were to build a city there, it would still just provide 2 food and 1 production because that is how the game applies bonuses for a city. Another example, if I build it here, this tile currently has 2 food, settling on it would change that to be +2 food and +1 production. Okay, so cities always have a minimum yield of 2 food and 1 production regardless of where you put them. Remembering that we want to settle along freshwater, we've narrowed it down to probably these 8, realistically these 6 tiles. Now we need to consider which ones have the most yields. And there again, we can narrow it down even further. Settling here, this tile won't change, right? Settling here provides +1 production, great. Settling here, this tile wouldn't change. So I'm really narrowing it down now to probably these 2 tiles. They both have 2 food and 2 production, so settling a city won't change their base yields, but I can get further yields from them if they have something to offer. Which brings me in to my next discussion, settling on top of resources. Okay, so what you can do in this game is settle on top of a resource to instantly connect it to your city. So let's take this tea tile here, for example. You can see it provides 2 food and 1 science. That's because it has tea. Now, settling here would provide 2 food, 1 science, and also I would get 1 production, remembering that cities always provide at least 2 food and 1 production. It would also instantly connect the tea luxury resource to my empire once I unlock irrigation. Now that differs from a normal game where you might settle here and then send a builder to improve the tile, right? Normally you would have to improve a tile to connect the luxury. You don't if you settle on top of it. The only downside is you won't get any potential yield improvements that you would normally get from improving a tile. So this tea would provide +1 gold, from once I research irrigation and then improve the tile. Am I worried about +1 gold? No, probably not. And if this T was here, I would definitely settle on top of it. However, in this case, it is not near fresh water, and therefore I'm not really interested in it. But in a game where you're looking at a resource and you're thinking maybe it was there, you're thinking, oh, should I, shouldn't I, should I? You can most definitely settle on top of that luxury, and I would recommend you do it if it's already on a high yield tile. In this case, it isn't. It's on a plain and simple 2-food tile, just like it would be if it was here. So I'm not going to move and settle on it, but definitely something for you to consider. Do consider moving and settling on tiles. My next consideration, and my main final consideration and tip for settling this city, would be to look at what is it going to connect in the future. So the way that cities grow in this game is 1, 2, 3 tiles out is considered the workable distance. So wherever you're going to settle, consider 1, 2, 3 tiles away in all directions, because those tiles will be within grasp of your city as it grows, providing that another civilization or city doesn't come along and steal some of them, right? So providing you're not settling too close to yourself and other people aren't settling too close to you, you're going to have a 3-tile radius around the city which you can work, build, and improve on. In particular, of course, you want to be paying close attention to the immediate spots. That's 1 tile and then 2 tiles out. So you want to sort of canvas around, have a look and see where are the high yield tiles, where are some natural features that I may want to be near, and where are some that I don't want to be near. So looking at this location, you can see that there's a desert out here. Desert hills are slightly better than desert plains because they provide +1 production, but by and large, these tiles are not good tiles, right? They don't provide any food, so they're not going to help me grow, and they provide really bare minimum of everything else. So 1, 2, 3. These tiles are going to be within my city's reach, and I'm gonna be working or building on these tiles. I don't particularly want desert tiles. I'm not planning on doing a Petra run or any advanced things like that. I'm more interested in some of these high growth tiles over this way, right? This one here has 3 food. You can see a few tiles that have some production. This one here is a Grassland Hills, which we're very bullish on because it has 2 production. So, thinking about everything I've just discussed, I might want to consider moving a little bit further this way. I'm eyeing up this tile in particular, and I think this is the one where I will settle. So I'm going to move my settler 1 tile. Didn't gather much more scouting information other than fairly flat food, lots of food, not a whole lot of production, but lots of food. So I'm going to settle here on top of this stone, which will allow me to connect it much easier. I won't be able to build the tile improvement later, okay? I won't be able to build it later. And I should add that in general, settling on resources that require things like plantations, irrigation is better, and settling on top of things that require mining is slightly worse. But I'm going to do it anyway for the purpose of this video. Whomp! Founding my city. On top of that, you'll see the resources gone, but that doesn't really matter to me because I'm along fresh water. I do have another stone here, I have another luxury here, and the immediate tiles around my city, that's the 1 tile radius that it's instantly claimed, and then 2, and finally 3, don't have any desert tiles. I have some high food tiles, reasonable production, which I'll be sure to get online quickly. Overall, I'm pretty happy with where I've established Rome here. My last thing that I'm going to want you guys to do and to consider, not only for your first city, but particularly now as you start thinking, okay, where do I want to settle next, right? Where do I want my next city to be? Would be to come down here to, again, your lenses, map options, map tracks, and click Add Track. It doesn't really matter where you click, so just click anywhere, and this will bring up all of the different things in the game and all of their different adjacency bonuses and yields. Okay, it's a lot, and it might be a little bit overwhelming for this video, as this is targeted more towards some basic guides and understanding. But I would encourage you to just have a look at some of maybe the key districts. All right, so if I mouse over campus, I can see here all of the different adjacency bonuses that a campus gets. Generally, this is +1 science for each adjacent mountain tile, +1 science for 2 rainforests or districts, and then some specific things like the Great Barrier Reef and the Government Plaza. If I click that and click OK, you can see it pops down a little tack here, and so I can plan ahead and think maybe I want to put my campus here. Now, in this instance, I probably don't, right? Because I probably want to put it next to some mountains. So I might spy here or potentially here in between hills and mountain. That might be a really great spot for a campus. This looks like it's going to be quite a productive zone, right? There's going to be a quarry here. So I could consider putting a campus here. It would be next to a district, which is probably going to be one here. It's next to mountains, right? So there's lots of different planning. But I would encourage you to just pop in and add some map tags, right? We could go and just really have a look at that adjacency bonus, because that will help you understand where to plan your next thing, right? Let's say maybe I'm thinking about, well, in the future I'm going to want an industrial zone. You can see here, industrial zones benefit from being adjacent to quarries, again, adjacent to 2 other districts, to mines, to lumber mills, and all sorts of other tiles like aqueducts and dams. So as I'm thinking about where I want to put my next city or where I want to put this one, I can put these tile tracks down and do some forward planning. That concludes today's video on how to settle the best cities in Civilization 6, particularly with a focus on new cities, on your first city, but you can apply these tips really to any further settlements in the game. Thank you so much for watching, and if you did enjoy this video, please leave a like rating and maybe consider subscribing and joining my rapid growing community here on YouTube, and that will do it for me today. Until next time, everybody, I'll see you then.